Okay, I've got us recording on my end. So with that, I'll go ahead and kick things off. So thanks so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate everybody. This is the committee meeting for the Water and Sewer Infrastructure Subcommittee of the Georgia Jobs and Infrastructure Committee. We do have members of the public who are joining us online and by phone. So welcome to those and our committee members. We are recording this meeting. This is for committee member information only. So we're going to be walking you all through what the review process will look like for applications today. So for our members of the public who are joining us online, we won't be taking public input during this meeting. So just please keep your lines on mute so that we don't have interruptions throughout. We do have the little hand raised gesture for our committee members. If you want to use that to flag us that you want to ask a question or make a comment, so we can call on you, make sure we don't miss anybody throughout. Like I said, we're going to be going through what the process will look like for reviewing applications as they are coming through. And Jen's going to give you an update on where we are in receiving those applications. We've also rolled out a portal. We're in the process of rolling out a portal for all of you to help corral and organize all of these applications as they're coming through so that you won't be dealing with hundreds and hundreds of pieces of paper to store these. So Jen's going to give you some screenshots of what that process will look like as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Jen Wade, our grants manager, to walk you through.
Thank you. Can you see my screen okay? My PowerPoint?
Not just yet. Try one more time.
Okay. Doesn't seem to like me today. Let's try it again. Let me know when you get it.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So just like Stephanie said, just going to go through a brief overview of where we're at and kind of the next steps, just to kind of keep you guys up to date with what's going on and all of that. So as of this morning, for your water and sewer infrastructure category, there are 236 applications in draft status. That just means that basically folks have either gone in and registered and just put like a placeholder there for a proposal name and may or may not have even put in any information into any of the boxes yet. Or they could have, started it and then saved it, and that still keeps it in draft status. There have been 3 so far that have submitted. We will begin to push all of these out to our website once we kick anybody back that may be missing documentation or anything like that to make sure their application is complete. So just because we have some submitted ones here, the reason you're not seeing them on the website yet is just because we have to comb through those again for the eligibility and just make sure they're not missing anything. So just to kind of give you an overview of the other committees and what they're looking at right now, broadband infrastructure has 98 in draft status with 2 submitted, and then negative economic impact has 355 in draft status and 12 submitted. And so as we imagine, obviously negative economic impact will be, the really, really big one. Right now, we're awaiting the publication of some FAQs regarding each category that'll provide additional clarity for not just you members of the committee, but also for some applicants. There's some great answers to a lot of questions we've been fielding, and we kind of mixed some stuff in that Treasury had also pulled in too from the respective categories. So we should get those out. Hopefully we'll get those out and those will clarify some stuff. So we will begin to, like I said, submit applications online in a synopsis form. We'll include the proposal name, the applicant name, location, status, and that status is just going to be there because right now, anyone that you see, they're going to be listed as submitted. And if those get awarded, then they will move from the submitted to awarded stage later on the website. We'll also include the amount requested, the project description, and then just for broadband, a map attachment. If your water and sewer folks include a map or anything like that, we can also include that as well. But primarily for the broadband folks is where we're including that. So just some overall expectations for the general application review process. Obviously, we want you to make sure that you read through proposals prior to actually doing the grant review. Start early because it might take longer than you anticipate. I know a lot of people on this call already have experience reviewing RFPs, so you're probably pros at it, but we always just ask folks to kind of comb through things before, just so they have a general understanding of everything and then start the review process. Obviously, keep the proposals and scores confidential. thoroughly understand the information requested in the proposal and assess each proposal's strength and weakness. And once we get to the scoring review sheet that you'll see in the portal, that'll make a little bit more sense too. In reviewing proposals, step one, we just ask if you haven't already, I know most of you probably already have, comb through the interim final review from Treasury. Any updates to that, if you want to go straight to that, our OPB website, the dedicated website for the state fiscal recovery funds, we update all those. So the FAQs are there, the interim final rule is there. Any updates that Treasury has, we put them right to that website too. So that way you're not having to go between two different websites if you don't want to. If you want to go there, that's totally fine too. We wanted to kind of keep a repository on our website just in case. Become familiar with the goals of Georgia's priorities for your committee. As we've discussed with water and sewer, we're going to give you guys a quick guide for each committee. So for water and sewer, because Treasury is in line with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and drinking water, we are going to pull some of those eligible projects in a list for you. That way you'll have a really easy reference guide in addition to having the eligibility requirements from the interim final rule and some things that Treasury has laid out in their FAQs as well. So we'll put that guide together for you and get that to you in an email as we get a little bit further down the road. The requirements of the proposal and reporting requirements. Again, on our website, we have a link to the compliance and reporting guidance that Treasury has put out. We anticipate that will probably change as they do, just because they'll flesh out a little bit more the details that they're looking for reporting. And so as that gets updated, again, we'll update that on the website too. And we'll include, links, and we'll include that document in all your review materials as well. So you can reference those while you're scoring. And then the scoring criteria and point allocations. Step two, completing your initial read-through of each applicant's proposal. Using this initial read-through of the proposals to get a sense of what the proposals are about and how they are organized. And then step three, rereading each proposal and begin scoring, making sure to record proposal strengths and weaknesses on the review form, which I'll show you. And then again, just we kind of reiterated this a lot, but providing helpful comments for the applicant. And that just helps them if you scored someone, as like a 6 or a 7 on their competencies and capabilities, just having the comment that reflects why you scored them that way, not only shows them obviously why you scored them that way, but it's helpful for them in the future. If you ever written a grant, it's really great to get the feedback to see how you could have improved on, certain sections. And so, detailed comments there would be helpful. Just some general rules and tips. All of you are going to score very differently. That's just, it's okay. It's how it goes in grant scoring. Just make sure that you're consistent in your scores. So if you were to score someone, again, a 6 or a 7 on project design and implementation, and you were very strict about making sure that, they scored a 6 on project design and implementation because they didn't include, a very detailed timeline. They're going to attach a timeline too, but they didn't include a lot of detail there. They left some gaps in their proposal and things like that. And then you get 3 applications down the road and they might have done the same thing. Just make sure that they're not getting a 9 and the other one's getting a 6 or a 7, like I said, with kind of the same kind of gaps and everything in there. So as long as you're consistent, everyone's going to score differently, but being consistent in your scoring pattern will make a big difference. Only score a proposal based on the information provided, avoiding assumptions. Score proposals against the criteria set forth by the interim final rule, not against other grant programs or other applications. So we're not pulling it outside. We're not trying to put any other further restrictions than what Treasury has outlined in the interim final rule. And then no fractions or decimals, please. In general, you're going to deduct points for missing information. That's kind of a given with gaps in the narrative and things like that. But just make sure your score is primarily based on the clarity of their responses or their lack of addressing the response needed based on the scoring criteria, which we'll go over again. Just having an answer to each question in the application requirement doesn't justify a high score. For instance, if it's project design and implementation and they just have something generally outlining their project, but it's not very detailed, just because they put something there doesn't mean they get a 9 or a 10. It's based on the quality and the questions that they answer. Proposals should make a strong case for funding and show compelling need. If a proposal includes more than one project, it is possible that one or more, but not all projects will be funded based on parameters of the project. The committee has discretion to recommend projects within a proposal without funding the entire project. So as you're looking at these and scoring them, you can make detailed notes about, if a project that is included doesn't sound feasible to you, or eligibility may be questionable, we still kind of come through it and it fits, but maybe it doesn't fit in the framework of the overarching project, then the committee has discretion to recommend funding of one or more, but not all of the projects associated with the proposal. Proposals should reflect guidance outlined in the interim final rule, be reasonable, reflect best practices in the industry, demonstrate effective collaboration, and effectively address the needs of the community or industry. And I know we've talked a lot about that, and kind of feel like a broken record at this point, talking about how committees are really going to be looking at broader community, broader industry impact. So a range of scores. So a perfect score of 100, which means that they get 10 points in all categories, is pretty rare. That would mean that there's no weaknesses whatsoever in the proposal, so it generally doesn't happen. In the same token, a score of 0 is also rare, and the only difference there, the exception would be match funds, right? So if someone didn't have the match funds in there, they could potentially have a 0 in that section. So, but other scores, if a 0 in project design and implementation because you may not like the way they wrote it, or whatever, those are going to be really rare. That means they don't have any strengths whatsoever. So just keep that in mind. But if you do feel like a score of 100 or a 0 warranted, so a 0 or a 10 in each section, just make sure you document your justifications completely in the comment section. Before I go on to the portal and the grant lifecycle, do I have any questions so far about the process? I just wanted to stop here for a quick minute.
Jen, I got a question.
Yeah.
Robert Dickey. You mentioned about match funds scoring. Where are we on match funds? Is there a certain level that has to be met?
I have it actually a little bit more detail in just a minute when we go over the scoring criteria. There is no requirement for a certain level. Obviously, folks that don't have the match in there would get a 0. But if they have any other, and I'll show you when we get to that point too. So it'll just be at your discretion. If they have more match funding, then you can score them higher. If they have a 0, that would just mean that they didn't bring any match funds to the table. And I'll show you here in just one second as we get to that scoring criteria. Does that answer it for now? This is just a general graphic of kind of where the process is, grant, how it's going to flow, grant application submittal, over to admin review, then to the members of the committee for scoring and recommendations, then final approval, approved applications, and obviously the funding distribution. So for your review, I know when we initially talked, we thought we would have some sort of either paper, like Stephanie said earlier, or some sort of like Adobe sign that we would do. But like Stephanie said, you guys will be accessing the applications to review and score them in the Georgia Grants portal. So they're working on the development of that now. All of you guys will need to register in the Georgia Grants portal eventually. You don't have to go today. I put TBD on there just because we want to make sure that it is fully developed, so that way when you do log in, you see everything that you need to see, so it doesn't cause any confusion. But we will help facilitate all the committee registrations and provide technical assistance just to make sure that you guys have no problems getting in, and you can see the views that you guys need to see. I'll send an email out once that portal and registration is ready for you guys to go ahead and register, and then we can work on, again, that technical assistance piece. Once you get in, and I'll show you an example in just a second. Once you get in, you'll have 3 different statuses. You'll see pending review, in progress, and then initial review complete. So initial status, you'll see on the grant applications that require your review. So for anything that you haven't touched yet, you'll see pending review. Then once you go in, you have the option to start working on something and then you can save it, walk away, and then come back so you don't have to do it all in one sitting. Once you open it and start scoring and save it, then it changes to in progress. So anything that you see in progress means you've looked at it, potentially scored 1 or 2 items, maybe 3, whatever, but that you've left it and that you need to come back to finish that. All scoring fields at this point are in an editable status. It doesn't get locked. They're fully editable at that point. And then once you complete the review, then it changes to initial review complete. So that just means that you've done that. Again, it doesn't lock it, but it just shows us that all those have been complete. And then that's what you'll need to have prior to going to the collaboration session. You'll be able to log back in after the collaboration session and edit those fields since they're still editable. And then at a certain point, we'll give you a cutoff date, then we'll lock down the scores, and then those will be the ones that are turned in. I think you guys have already seen this before. This is the Georgia Grants portal, what it looks like. This is where the grant opportunities are. To the right of that, you'll see committee evaluation. And sorry, there's a lot of spelling errors here. This is our developer just did a quick mock-up for us. So this will be changed to the correct spelling, but you'll see the committee evaluation tab there. You will then be taken to this screen. This will have all of your applications in a big list, and you can see the status over here, like I was just telling you about, whether it's pending review, which means you haven't touched it yet. In progress means you've gone in, maybe scored some, saved it, walked away. You just need to go back in there and finish it. Your initial review complete, again, means that you've completed that first round prior to doing the collaboration session. And then once it is submitted, that is after the cutoff, after the collaboration session, that will be disclosed at some point. We'll figure out a date for that. I know this is very small. I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like. So don't feel like you have to like squint to read this because we're going to go through all the criteria anyway. But this is what your reviewer checklist will look like in the portal. It'll have your description of the issue. It'll have the bullet points that you're looking for again. It'll give you the box here to put in your reviewer comments on everything. And then you identify the strengths and the weaknesses, and then you score it. And you will have that for each field, for each scoring criteria. Once you do that, like I said, you can go through some of it. You'll click the save button if you just want to walk away and come back to it later. But if you finish it all, and then you go in, you can click the initial review complete, and then that will complete that the initial review. It happens all the time. I've been a reviewer on several grants that I've transposed things before. I've looked at project design and implementation, and I was trying to put it in a different category, and I might have put a 7 in where I meant to put a 6, and vice versa. So you have to go back in. You can go back into your screen, edit your score. So again, that is not locked down. So if you make a mistake, which happens all the time, you can go back in and change that. So now we're back at the scoring criteria. What I've done here is, rather than just bullet point it out, putting it in question form so that you can ask yourself if the applicant has put enough detail in the application to warrant the score that you're going to give them. So for the description of the issue, you're going to be looking at, does the applicant define the specific problem they seek to address and how it was impacted by COVID-19, if any? Those will be on a lot of the negative economic impact side of things. Does the applicant describe the process used to assess, analyze, or determine the nature of the problem and explain any gaps in resources or limitations in funding without these COVID-19 response funds? Does the applicant identify the geographic boundaries of the proposed jurisdictions, communities, the zip codes, as well as the population size, demographic makeup? And so what you're looking for here is, are they identifying in detail what community, what areas are going to be impacted as a result of this project? Project design and implementation. Does the applicant identify the program objectives and describe the vision for the target population, how the vision will address the problems identified in the description of the issue section previously, and the broader impact to communities, jurisdictions, and industries? And again, I've stressed that with the applicants that have reached out to me about questions or to our team. Is each objective measurable and identify strategies to achieve the objectives? Does the applicant include a comprehensive timeline? They should attach it in the document, but they can also go through that narrative form in the project design and implementation that identifies their milestones, lists deliverables, and indicates who's responsible for each activity. Does the applicant propose to build a broadband network owned, operated by, or affiliated with local governments, nonprofits, and cooperatives? Capabilities and competencies. Does the applicant demonstrate their capabilities to implement the project and competencies of the staff assigned to the project to include the financial management of funding? Does the applicant detail the level of support for the project, as well as the expertise of individuals who will be responsible for managing the project? Does the applicant indicate how they will monitor strategy implementation and achievement of objectives? And there is a section, for attachments in the portal for the applicant, and they can attach letters of support. So if they don't demonstrate it here, we will also, you'll be able to see all of their attachments too. So if for some reason you don't see this here, does the applicant detail the level of support by the project? Maybe they mention it briefly, and there may be some gaps for you, but just look to their attachments to see if they've maybe, put some letters of support in there or indicated it in one of their attachments. Does the applicant demonstrate their ability to manage and monitor any subawards, right? We're going to have a lot of projects that have multiple projects, so multiple subawards. So the primary applicant just needs to demonstrate that they can manage and monitor those subawards to then turn around and report to us for Treasury. Does the applicant indicate how it will govern changes or modifications to the strategy and ensure project and fiscal accountability? Does the applicant identify a plan for collecting, collating, and submitting timely performance data? And for if anybody's reaching out to you or asking about the performance measures again, they can find those in that reporting and compliance guide that's on the website. That's where our team has been guiding people to, so they can kind of see and understand what Treasury has outlined thus far. Performance measures, plans for collecting data. Does the applicant describe the process for measuring project performance, identify who will collect the data, who is responsible for performance measurement, and how the information will be used to guide and assess the program? Does the applicant demonstrate understanding of the performance data to be collected and reported? Does the applicant identify the criteria that will determine how and if the objectives have been successfully met and one or more specific measurable outcomes, and the data sources that will be used to determine whether the outcome was accomplished? So for the budget, they're going to submit an overall general budget. So we're just looking to see, you guys will be looking to see if the applicant submitted, a complete budget, reasonable, cost effective, and allowable. After our team kind of comes through this, you'll really be looking at cost effectiveness, reasonable, if it's reasonable. You guys have the water sewer background too, so you'll be looking at it from that angle. And then they will also attach a budget narrative. So if you have a proposal that includes 7 different projects up under a primary applicant, so you have 7 different subawards, we have asked them to have a total overarching budget, but then in the budget narrative really break it down. Because once we get to the point where, committee has discretion to, again, choose between, if there are some projects that are more feasible or whatnot, you can recommend, funding certain projects, but maybe not the whole thing. So that's where that budget narrative will come into play, when you can see a breakdown of all the subawards and how that wraps, into the whole budget. Matching funds. Does the applicant have matching funds? First thing we're looking for. The more funding an applicant has, obviously, the more points that they can receive. Just as an example, an applicant with no match, they could receive 0. An applicant with 10% could receive 2 points, et cetera, depending on how you choose to score them. So does that answer your question about the match funds? Perfect. Okay. I see you nodding. So for next steps,
Hey, Jen, I think we have one question.
Oh yeah, sure.
Dr. Jean.
Hey, Jennifer, I have a question on in-kind service from the project proponents. Do we consider in-kind some sort of matching in funding?
That's a good question. So that we had that earlier too. And as far as the scoring criteria goes, the match funding would not count for points on this area. However, like I told the other committee this morning, I would strongly encourage folks to put that in kind, because that, put that in the project design and implementation, because that's still showing partnership, broader impact, industry reach, and things like that too. So if they do have in kind, although they wouldn't get points in the match fund scoring criteria section, it could potentially, if you're scoring someone and you see the in kind, in their project design implementation, you see again that partnership and that bolstering of the project and the support. So that could potentially increase their score there for you, right? If you were to see that as a committee member. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Rick, do you have a follow-up on that?
Yes, Jen, has there been any consideration on the matching funds to account for the ability to come up with matching funds? Is the intent just to strictly score them on the ability to come up with dollars, or do we modify that with some account of their ability to raise those funds or provide those funds?
So this also came up earlier. And so the reason we did match funds in this way, the NEUs and the counties have all received another ARPA funding on the local level. So they can use that. So that is already there for them, and they can use that as leverage to kind of bolster their project. So if they're going to, put in for a water sewer project, they can add those funds to this pot to be able to kind of bolster that. So that's kind of how we did it, or why we did it that way. So as of right now, that was kind of the thought process behind it.
So to follow up on that, I mean, we're saying matching, but we're really looking for leveraging dollars across communities and showing that local communities have skin in the game. So knowing that different sized communities are going to have different availabilities of those ARPA funds, they all receive something, but certainly different levels of funding. I think what we're looking for is, how much of that have they put towards it, and if it was a priority for them for their local ARPA funding, that they're bringing that to the table to ask state dollars to match their money.
Any more questions?
I've got another question. This is Representative Robert Dickey. Just talking about the scoring criteria. Where did it originate, with you and OPB, or is this federal, or where does this scoring criteria originate?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a process that originated with us, but it's in line with all the other practices. We've looked at other states and how they've done it. We've looked at other grant programs, so it's not out of line with any other grant program out there. It's different, but the entirety of all the ARPA funds, they're unprecedented anyway. They're different in every single way, right? So even like the broadband one is very different from any other broadband grant. This is different than any other water sewer grants out there, and we've kept it pretty streamlined to keep it simple so that we're not imposing any other restrictions than what is already laid out there in interim final rule.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is you put a lot into the capabilities to manage, monitor, performance data, matching. It just seems like, and I hadn't seen any applications, of course, but I just wonder about some smaller communities being able to manage all that, and whether how that's going to play out. Or, I mean, do we need some other agency or some other funding to help communities with some of this other long-term management?
So to go back to go ahead, Stephanie.
No, regarding the capabilities and competencies, certainly this is not meant to just award. It's probably not the shiniest application, right? But we are looking for folks who we know are going to be able to adequately have the capacity to manage some of these projects. So I think that's something for the committee to just keep in mind when you're scoring. And again, you're scoring based on your, priorities and criteria. Each member is going to score slightly differently. But we want to make sure when we're looking at those sections that we are giving weight to those who we think do have the appropriate resources in place to be able to be appropriate managers of the fund, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, that's it. Most grant, any grant program that you have out there, that's the competencies and capabilities, they usually flesh it out a whole lot more. And just in keeping in line with that, like Stephanie was saying, that's kind of why we kept that, because we want to make sure that we have the audit trail, they can track everything, and all those. So let me get my PowerPoint back up and going. There we go.
Senator Walker, you have.
I just want to, as a follow-up to that, I believe in the July 15th meeting, you told us that the communities could include costs for management of the project in their grant request.
Correct. So they can do. Oh, go ahead, Stephanie. Sorry.
No, you go ahead, Jen.
I can't see because I have the PowerPoint. So I can't see about that. Sorry. So yes, they can put administrative costs in, and the administrative costs have to be exactly what you said, directly tied to the implementation of the projects associated with the funding. So I talked to folks that have, wanted to put like a grant coordinator kind of position in, to where they're coordinating these their performance measures, kind of collecting that all together for them, and helping track the project status and things like that. So yes, they could put those in as administrative costs, as long as they're in line with implementing the grant fund.
So if it was a smaller community that did not have personnel already on staff to handle it, they could contract, say, with the regional commission maybe, or hire a consultant and include that cost in the grant application, correct?
Of course. And we've had a lot of some of the cities that have reached out to me have asked specifically about consultants. And then that's the point of capabilities and competencies. They would just include the consultant's capabilities and competencies, right? We understand that this is a large undertaking, and then they could just, discuss the consultant they would like to hire and their capabilities of handling not just the financial piece of it, but the project management side too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question real quick, if I may.
Certainly.
So I've got some projects that we're going to be scoring in this committee that I know are in my district. And I was just, I guess, would it be okay for me to write a letter of support, even though I'm on this committee judging these things? But what's your thoughts on that?
Jen, do you want to take that one? Jen and I had talked before this about, if you have something that your entity has put forward, recusing yourself from scoring that particular application, but scoring the remainder. So I do think if you want to write a letter of support and kind of tag on to that particular application, I would just recuse myself from scoring that particular application when you're doing your review, but still leave it for other members to score.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, no, this would not be any entity that I'm associated with. It's just different projects within my district is all I'm talking about.
Yeah, I would say, like Stephanie said, if you write the letter of support, then you would just have to recuse yourself of the scoring. So it just depends on if it's something that you're, how attached to the project you are, things like that. I know we may have committee members that their agencies might actually put an application in. The same thing would, be true there. They would not obviously be able to score their own.
Hey, this is David Dove, Governor Kemp's counsel. What's the basis of that opinion?
We can revisit that. We were just trying to look at, conflicts of interest throughout this. So we could definitely defer to your guidance on that as well.
I keep getting this feedback because I think y'all muted me, and so the voiceover was talking over your response.
We can certainly revisit that with you. We were looking at potential conflicts of interest and just trying to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest. But
right. My question was, what's the legal basis of your opinion that you just stated?
I don't have a specific code section to cite.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Any more questions? Okay. So just the next step, we're going to await those updated FAQs, and then we'll get you guys registered for the account whenever that opens up. I'll send you guys an email, and then you'll eventually also get those committee guide sheets. Those got to contain a little bit more information on eligible projects. We'll pull that information out for interim final review, just kind of like a general cheat sheet to have in front of you as you're kind of going through all this. Maybe some examples of eligible projects or anything else that might be helpful for you guys. We'll follow up with instructions 1 week prior to individual reviews and tentatively set the collaboration sessions, but we'll hold up on those based on the volume of awards. Again, since everything's so tentative, we might just have to like adjust some things there. So just keeping it flexible. So we'll keep you guys posted as far as next steps on dates. And that's really all I have. I did want to point out we have some members of the public that are on this call, and so obviously for committee members, feel free to keep calling me, emailing me as your point of contact. But for general questions for the public, since we're fielding so many phone calls about this and emails, we've broken it down for broadband. If you will reach out to me, jennifer.wade@opb.georgia.gov, for water sewer questions, jasmine.lewis2@opb.georgia.gov. And for negative economic impact, samir.anderson@opb.georgia.gov. And then I'll open it up for questions from the committee or feedback.
Hey, Jen, this is Larry Walker.
Yeah.
I need to get a copy of the interim final rule. Is it on the OPB website?
It's linked to our website. We kind of use that as a central hub if you want to use that. Anything that's updated there. But I'll send you a link in the email once we get off.
Got a couple other questions if you don't mind.
Of course.
My notes from July 15th said the period of performance was March of 2021 through December of 2026, but the funds had to be obligated by 2024. And it sounds like Treasury is, even in the last week or two, changing or clarifying the rules. Is there any consideration of extending the grant application period? I mean, what's the August 30 deadline? What's the or 31st? What's the thinking or reasoning behind that? It seems pretty short period of time.
Yeah, so right now we have it set for August 31st. This whole process is a tentative process, right? We've asked, for feedback and comments, kind of going back and forth. So right now it's still set for that. We can revisit that. We can, discuss that. It again, depends on the volume. People in any grant application process tend to wait to the last minute. So I'm sure that uptick will happen probably next week. We're still fielding a lot of calls. And as you can see, just from the people that are in draft status right now, there are probably a lot of applications still sitting there, but right now it is the 31st. But again, the whole process is flexible.
The concern I have heard from constituents is that getting engineering work done in this world we live in, and with really the remarkably good economy we have in Georgia, is been real difficult. And some of these projects, they can't just swag a number. I mean, they need some engineering, and they just haven't been able to get that turned around in time. And I hate to see good projects left on the sideline because of that constraint. So that's my feedback there. I'm a little confused about the difference between the period of performance and the obligation period. I don't know if these things have to start on March 2021, or I didn't interpret it that way when you said it last meeting, but I assume they could start way after March of 2021 as long as they're completed by December of 26.
Yeah, I can clarify that a little bit for you. So essentially, since the funding is with OPB, so we have to make sure that we obligated that it's actually out, awarded to entities, agencies, or what have you by that 2024, we can't just still be holding those funds by then. So we have to have it obligated by 2024 with projects being completed by that 2026 date. And you just mentioned the March date, which that came up again in our last meeting. So they can retroactive back to March. And we've had a lot of questions about that. And those are costs that that are eligible, as long as they're allowable costs, take that back, sorry. They can put in for March. However, if someone were to, let's say, hire a consultant and start them and take it back to March, if they're not awarded, then those costs, those are sunken costs for them, essentially. Like we're not responsible for costs associated from that period if they're not awarded. Does that clear things up a little bit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Does anybody else share my concern about the how rapid the compressed time frame on this that's on the committee? Chairman Dickey, have you heard that from any of your constituents or?
Absolutely, Senator, and I share that. I've heard that from the get-go, and of course, I've worried too, especially water and sewer is as you say, need some engineering to even get in a ballpark of what the cost might be. So yes, I would like to see us extend it if it's reasonable time.
Well, we can certainly take that under consideration.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. If you guys think of anything else, you guys have my number, you guys have my email address. Feel free to reach out anytime. We will keep updating you guys in the process. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for being flexible in the process. We appreciate it. We're definitely taking your feedback, and we really appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.